The old saying, what's in a name, takes on a whole new meaning when you meet my next guest. Nick Vine Hall is a man who specialises in names, and his book, which is called Tracing Your Family History in Australia, is a bestseller. Please welcome Nick Vine Hall. Nick, there was one word that I dodged there. What do you actually call yourself?
A genealogist.
A genealogist. I want to say a genealogist, but it's a genealogist.
Yes, in fact, I was once introduced on a television show in Washington about 3 years ago to about a third of America as a well-known gynaecologist from Australia.
And what happened after that?
Well, I said...
Nothing made sense.
I sort of traced family trees, actually.
Yeah. What does it actually mean? I mean, sure, you're an expert in names, but what can you tell us about names? Just where they came from and what they meant originally?
Yes, to both questions. We've all got a name. It's a sort of a distinctive extra tag that we've acquired and inherited for about the last 4 centuries. If you go back to about 1400, England only had about 4 million people, and each village might have 20 or so, and so there was Tom, Dick and Harry and Mary, and they knew who everybody was. Right,
so what does Negus mean? We talked about George Negus before. Can you do one quickly on Negus?
Well, it's a locative surname given to somebody from the place that they came from, and it means Neg's house. But when I researched it further, I found that Colonel Negus, in the time of Queen Anne, was famous for making a potion that was helpful for habitual drunkards.
George, if you've just tuned in, if someone's told you that we're discussing you on the show, we've said lovely things. Peter Ford said some dreadful things about you, but I've been saying lovely things about you, and that's what your name means, a place for habitual drunkards. So have a lovely time there in Russia, and good luck to you and Kirsty. Righto, what about other names? What about what about
Russia.
Newton?
What about Newton?
Yeah, that's what a lot of people say. What about Newton?
It's a bit of a worry. Well, Bert, I don't know how to put this to you, but it's a very common surname.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for being on the show, and lovely to see you. Good luck to you always. Nick Vine Hall, then. A very common name. It's not very common in Australia.
Well, it comes from Newtown.
Yeah.
Other variants are Newington. And there are about 100 parishes throughout the British Isles called Newton. And when a family moved to a new place and maybe set up a new village, and then they went somewhere else, they were known as Bert from Newtown.
Is it an English name? Is it British?
Yes, very, very
well, that
English.
surprises me. Well, yeah, but my blood is German, a little bit of English, and a lot of Irish. Matter of fact, we're the only family that goose steps on St Patrick's Day. No, but yeah, it's predominantly German and Irish.
Well, I guess it must be on the female line, Bert.
Pardon?
I guess it must be on the female line.
Yeah, so it doesn't mean anything specifically, except it's very common.
Well, there are a lot of them on the ground. Thick on the ground.
Thick on the ground, OK. Just stepped over a Newton type thing.
That's right.
Nick, what about your own name? Is it a hyphenated name, or is it just the collection of 2 surnames? Vine Hall.
It's 2 names. In 1774, Mr. Hall married a Hannah Vine, and they had a son. They named his Christian names John Vine, surname Hall. Now, Vine means somebody who owned a pub, drank a lot of wine, had a sign over his inn that was a bunch of vine of grapes. Just this, another name like that, which I hope you can keep a straight face over, is Lillycrap. That was
Lily doesn't offend me.
That was somebody who had a crop of lilies.
Yeah. And short.
On his signpost.
Yeah. There was another unusual name. Kevin Arnett, who's looking after you today as one of our researchers, he's very much into names. He quite often just reads the phone book and makes a call and sees if he's lucky or not. He told me there's an unusual cat's bum or something he wanted me to say, because Kevin's one of those people that giggles when he says it. Cat's bum?
Well, yes, I
guess... What's the origin of that? Well, you know what I mean. I mean, why don't people change the... Yes, I do. I have 2 cats.
Right, well, it's a nickname surname, like Gorbachev is a nickname surname for the Senator of the Hunchback. Cat's bum was a nickname we found in the early parish registers of Bedfordshire in England, marrying off to a John Smith. And she obviously didn't like her nickname around the village, and so she married to change her name. And the vicar wrote in the margin, "The lady in question is known by all hereabouts by the name that appears in this book."
And then cat's bum.
Cat's bum.
Yeah. If George, you're just passing the television set again, we're not talking about you. What about Helen Reddy, who's a friend of mine and a friend of a lot of people in Australia? She's very heavily into this.
Oh, yes.
names.
She's a very keen genealogist and has traced her ancestry back to the First Fleet, along with perhaps 30,000 other people who are keen to have pioneer roots. And Helen was over about 5 years ago, and she found the lines went back to Tasmania. Everybody wants a convict these days, so they can wear it on their sleeve like a proud badge. I've even been offered a blank cheque by a Hungarian to get him a convict.
Yeah, that's good stuff, is it?
Oh, yes.
And if you came over on the First Fleet, well, I mean, you've really made it, haven't you?
Oh, yes, you're more Aussie than anyone else.
Well, indeed, if your ancestors came out on the First Fleet. Well, it sounds fascinating. The book is, as I say, a bestseller. This is the one to look for, Tracing Your Family History in Australia. Nick, thank you very much indeed for your time. Nick Vine Hall, a genealogist.